Dennis Johnson was one of NBA's most complete guards, winning 3 championships and making Larry Bird call him
a game. Dennis Johnson is definitely the best player I've ever played with in my life.
He transformed from a high-flying scorer in Seattle into one of the greatest defensive players ever with the Boston Celtics. However, in 2007, at just 52 years old, DJ's heart would suddenly stop while coaching practice in the NBA D-League. In 1954, Dennis Johnson was born in Compton, California. His story would defy every expectation, every statistical probability, and every scouting report ever written about him. Picture this: a modest house bursting with life, where Dennis was just one voice among 16 children. Number 8 in line, to be precise. The kind of home where finding a quiet moment was as rare as catching lightning in a bottle. His mother, armed with the patience of a saint and the determination of a warrior, worked tirelessly as a social worker, while his father's calloused hands shaped the city one brick at a time. It was the kind of blue-collar foundation that taught Dennis the value of hard work, even if no one could see the greatness brewing beneath the surface. But here's where the story takes its first unexpected turn. Young Dennis, standing at a mere 5 feet 9 inches in high school, wasn't exactly turning heads on the basketball court. In fact, he barely saw any playing time at all. While his classmates were chasing basketball dreams, Dennis was just another face in the hallways, seemingly destined for the kind of ordinary life that his working-class roots had laid out for him. Baseball was actually his first love, and for a while, it seemed like that would be his path, if he was lucky enough to have a path in sports at all. The cramped living conditions, the modest beginnings, the lack of athletic recognition, it all painted a picture of a young man who, by all conventional wisdom, should have faded into the background of American life. But sometimes, the most extraordinary stories start with the most ordinary beginnings. Imagine working a forklift in the dead of summer, the monotonous hum of machinery filling your ears for $2.75 an hour. That was Dennis Johnson's reality, until Mother Nature decided to deal him a wild card that would change everything. Like a character in a superhero origin story, Johnson's body suddenly transformed. The 5'9" kid who couldn't make his high school team shot up to 6'3" practically overnight. But it wasn't just the height. Johnson developed what his future teammates would call rocket launcher legs, a supernatural ability to explode off the ground that made him seem like he was defying gravity itself. The forklift operator was transforming into something else entirely. During lunch breaks and after grueling shifts, Johnson would find his way to local courts, where his newfound athleticism began turning heads. The same guy who once couldn't get off the bench was now dominating pickup games, his vertical leap leaving defenders helpless and spectators whispering, "Who is this kid?" What makes this metamorphosis even more remarkable is how Johnson approached it. He didn't just rely on his physical gifts. He studied the game obsessively, developing a court awareness that would later make him one of the NBA's most feared defenders. Those countless hours of practice after mind-numbing warehouse shifts were laying the foundation for what would become one of basketball's most improbable success stories. In the unforgiving streets of Compton, where hoop dreams often went to die, Dennis Johnson's basketball story started like a whisper that nobody heard. At Dominguez High School, he was just another 5'9" kid with a basketball tucked under his arm, watching games from the bench, collecting dust while his heart collected disappointment. The stat sheets from those days tell a story of mere minutes, probably the only time in basketball history where Dennis Johnson's presence went unnoticed. When the final bell of high school rang, reality hit harder than any defender ever would. The streets of Compton don't offer many second chances, and Johnson found himself in the grinding rhythm of survival, punching time cards, driving forklifts, chasing paychecks that barely kept the lights on. But there was something that wouldn't let him rest, something that kept pulling him back to the blacktop: basketball's magnetic call. Then came the summer leagues, those sweltering afternoons playing alongside his brothers where magic started to happen. Like a delayed growth spurt of destiny, Johnson's body suddenly transformed. The 5'9" bench warmer exploded upward to 6 feet 3 inches. But it wasn't just the height. It was like someone had installed springs in his legs. The same kid who couldn't get off the bench was now soaring through the air, making defenders look like they were playing in slow motion. But beneath the rising star, shadows were gathering. As Johnson's basketball journey was about to take flight, 1997 brought a storm cloud that would cast a dark shadow over his personal life. An incident, one that would test his character and resolve, emerged just as his star was beginning to rise. It was as if fate was asking a question. Could this phoenix from Compton rise above not just physical limitations, but personal demons as well? This period marked the crucible where Dennis Johnson's true character would be forged, in the heat of personal struggle and the fire of relentless ambition. The basketball courts became more than just a place to play. They were his sanctuary, his redemption, and ultimately his path to something greater than anyone could have imagined for that quiet kid from Dominguez High. In the shadows of fame's spotlight, a darker chapter in Dennis Johnson's story emerged, one that would test the boundaries between personal demons and public persona. That night in 1997 became a turning point when the walls of a family home in Seattle transformed into the scene of a nightmare. The basketball star, who'd risen from nothing, now stood accused of something unthinkable, threatening his own family with a knife. The police report painted a chilling picture. An argument spiraling out of control, Johnson's hands around his wife's throat, the cold steel of a knife, and his son Dwayne's trembling fingers dialing 911. It was the kind of moment that shatters the carefully constructed image of a sports hero, revealing the complex, troubled human beneath. While Johnson would later plead not guilty and seek counseling to mend the fractured bonds of his family, some scars run too deep for time to fully heal. But the storm wasn't over. Like whispers in a dark alley, rumors began circulating through the NBA grapevine about something even more sinister. During his time with the Phoenix Suns, speculation swirled about Johnson's alleged involvement in cocaine trafficking and abuse. The basketball world buzzed with these underground stories. Here was a player who'd conquered every obstacle on the court, now reportedly entangled in the dangerous web of drug trade. Johnson's denials were firm and consistent, but in the world of professional sports, where perception often overshadows reality, the damage was already done. These allegations, like persistent shadows, followed him through the corridors of his career. Each stellar performance on the court now carried an unspoken asterisk, each triumph tinged with whispered doubts. The man who'd risen from forklift driver to NBA star now found himself fighting a different kind of battle, one where the opponent wasn't another player, but the ghosts of his own alleged misdeeds. The contrast was stark. On one side, the brilliant basketball mind that teammates would later call one of the smartest players they'd ever seen. On the other, a man grappling with personal demons that threatened to unravel everything he'd built. This duality would become part of Johnson's legacy, a reminder that even the most inspiring success stories can harbor darker chapters. The cocaine allegations hung like a storm cloud over Johnson's career, with former teammate Johnny High's accusations cutting deeper than most. In the cocaine-tainted era of the 1980s NBA, where white lines often blurred with sidelines, Johnson's denials were unwavering. Yet the whispers persisted, echoing through locker rooms and sports bars, adding another layer to the complex tapestry of DJ's legacy. How much truth lay in these allegations? The answer, like many aspects of Johnson's life, remains shrouded in shades of gray. But fate had one final cruel twist in its playbook. February 22, 2007, an ordinary Thursday at the Austin Convention Center. Johnson, now coaching the Austin Toros of the NBA Development League, was doing what he loved most, teaching the game that had given him everything. The practice session was winding down, the squeaking of sneakers filling the air, when suddenly, the unthinkable happened. In a moment that would freeze time for everyone present, Johnson collapsed. The same heart that had powered him through countless defensive stands, that had pushed him from forklift driver to NBA champion, simply stopped. For 23 excruciating minutes, paramedics fought to bring him back, their desperate efforts echoing through the stunned silence of the arena. But this was one battle that even the legendary defender couldn't win. At just 52 years old, Dennis Johnson, the unlikely hero from Compton, the defensive mastermind, the man who had weathered personal storms and professional glory, was gone. The cause? A heart attack that struck with the same suddenness that had once blessed him with his growth spurt. The gym where he fell would later become a shrine of sorts, marking the spot where one of basketball's most remarkable journeys came to an end. The irony wasn't lost on those who knew his story. The man who had survived the streets of Compton, overcome poverty, risen from obscurity, battled personal demons, and carved his name into NBA history, was taken down not by any of these challenges, but by his own heart. In those final moments, surrounded by the game he loved, Johnson's life story came full circle, from the high school bench to the NBA heights, and finally, to a coaching floor where he was passing on his hard-earned wisdom to the next generation. That February afternoon in Austin started like any other, but it would become a day that would echo through basketball history. Johnson was in his element at the Austin Convention Center, passing on his basketball wisdom to a new generation of D-League players. Witnesses say he was laughing, joking around during practice. Classic DJ, making the game fun even while teaching its finer points. Then, without warning, he collapsed on the sideline, the smile still fresh on his face. For those 23 agonizing minutes, time stood still in that gym. Medical personnel worked frantically, their movements a blur as they fought to restart the heart of a basketball legend. But despite their desperate efforts, despite all the medical knowledge and equipment at their disposal, Johnson's heart wouldn't respond. A man who had survived countless pressure-packed moments on the court had played his final quarter. The tributes that followed painted a portrait of a man larger than life. Larry Bird, never one for empty praise, called him one of the best teammates I ever had. Danny Ainge spoke of Johnson's basketball IQ, his clutch gene, the way he seemed to elevate his game when the stakes were highest. The basketball world mourned not just a player, but a complex figure who had left an indelible mark on the sport. But Johnson's legacy refuses to fit into a neat box. How do we reconcile the brilliant floor general who orchestrated some of the NBA's most memorable moments with the man who faced serious domestic violence allegations? The defensive wizard who shut down the league's best scorers with the figure who battled rumors of drug involvement? The ultimate teammate with someone who carried such personal turmoil? Perhaps Johnson's story is best understood as a testament to human complexity. On the hardwood, he was basketball brilliance personified, a 5-time All-Star, 3-time NBA champion, and Finals MVP who played his best when the lights shined brightest. His game-winning plays, lockdown defense, and court leadership wrote chapters in NBA history. Yet off the court, his struggles and controversies remind us that even our heroes wrestle with human frailties. From the cracked concrete of street courts to the polished floors of Los Angeles Harbor College, Dennis Johnson's raw talent was impossible to ignore. When Jim White first spotted him in a pickup game, it was like watching a diamond emerge from the rough. The coach's stomach turned, not from nausea, but from the electric anticipation of discovering something special. Here was a guard who could soar, score, and somehow grab rebounds like a center, putting up staggering numbers. 18.3 points and 12.0 rebounds per game, numbers that would help guide Harbor to a junior college state championship. But beneath the brilliance lay a brewing storm. Johnson's relationship with White became a dramatic dance of talent and temperament, a pattern that would echo throughout his career. 3 times he found himself kicked off the team, each dismissal a testament to his struggle with authority and discipline. It was as if Johnson was wrestling with 2 versions of himself: the explosive talent who could dominate a game, and the rebellious spirit who seemed determined to sabotage his own success. As his junior college years drew to a close, fate presented Johnson with a crossroads disguised as an opportunity. 2 universities, Azusa Pacific and Pepperdine, extended their hands, offering not just scholarships but lifelines. These weren't just offers to play basketball. They were potential escape routes from the self-destructive path Johnson seemed to be walking. The stakes couldn't have been higher. One decision could either launch him toward stardom or send him spiraling back to the warehouses and forklifts he'd worked so hard to leave behind. The moment crystallized everything about Johnson's journey: the tantalizing potential, the personal demons, the razor's edge between greatness and self-destruction. Here was a young man with rocket launcher legs and a rebellious heart, standing at a crossroads that would define not just his career, but his life. The question wasn't just which university he would choose, but Which version of Dennis Johnson would show up on campus? The hardwood at Pepperdine became Johnson's proving ground, where raw talent began morphing into refined skill. In that pivotal year, he put up numbers that turned heads. 15.7 points slicing through defenses, 5.8 rebounds snatched from bigger players, and 3.3 assists threading through traffic. But it was his defense that really got people talking. A relentless, suffocating style that would become his trademark in the years to come. Yet even as he was locking down opponents and lighting up scoreboards, Johnson's mind was clouded with doubt. The 1976 NBA draft loomed like a storm on the horizon, and he knew the whispers that circulated through front offices. Basketball scouts would watch him play, nodding at his obvious talent, then lean in close to discuss the character issues that followed him like shadows. That word troublemaker hung around his neck like a weight, threatening to drag down his NBA dreams before they could take flight. Behind closed doors, NBA teams were conducting a different kind of scouting report. They saw the explosive athleticism, the lockdown defense, the court awareness that couldn't be taught. But they also saw the pattern of clashes with authority, the 3 dismissals from Harbor College, the reputation for being difficult to coach. It was like looking at a Ferrari with a questionable engine. Beautiful to watch, but risky to invest in. Johnson felt this skepticism acutely. Despite dominating at the college level, he couldn't shake the feeling that his past might cost him his future. The same fire that made him such a fierce competitor on the court had often burned those trying to help him off it. As draft day approached, the question wasn't just about where he would be picked, but whether his talent would be enough to overshadow the red flags in his file. From the shadows of the second round, pick number 29 emerged a story that would reshape NBA history. When the Seattle SuperSonics called Dennis Johnson's name in the 1976 draft, few could have predicted they were selecting a future legend. The same teams that had whispered about character issues would soon be kicking themselves for letting this defensive dynamo slip through their fingers. Like a master storyteller saving the best plot twist for later, Johnson's career trajectory was about to take a dramatic turn. But it was that one moment, that single play against the Detroit Pistons, that would be forever frozen in basketball time. Picture it, the game hanging by a thread. Isaiah Thomas, one of the craftiest guards in NBA history, preparing to inbound the ball. Then, like a hawk swooping down on its prey, Larry Bird appears out of nowhere, snatching the pass from the air. What happened next was pure basketball poetry. Bird, with the instincts of a champion, immediately spots Johnson slicing toward the basket. The pass is perfect, the timing immaculate, and Johnson, the former forklift driver, the troublemaker, the draft day afterthought, lays the ball in for the win. It wasn't just a basket, it was a statement, a moment that encapsulated everything that made Dennis Johnson special. This wasn't just clutch performance. This was validation. That layup represented every doubt he'd overcome, every skeptic he'd proved wrong, every obstacle he'd hurdled since those days on Compton's concrete courts. In that split second between Bird's steal and Johnson's finish, you could see the full arc of his journey, from unwanted bench warmer to NBA game winner. The player that 28 teams had passed on had just shown why basketball is about more than just scouting reports and character assessments. Sometimes it's about heart, timing, and the ability to rise to the moment when everything is on the line. The shadows of 1997 cast a long darkness over Johnson's legacy. That domestic violence incident cracked open a window into his private struggles. While the basketball world watched him soar on the court, behind closed doors, demons were taking their toll. The drug allegations, though fiercely denied, painted yet another layer of complexity onto his story. Like a player fighting through a double team, Johnson had to navigate both public scrutiny and private turmoil. What kept him going? Some say it was the game itself, basketball becoming both his escape and his anchor. Between the lines, the whispers fell silent, replaced by the pure poetry of competition. Johnson channeled his struggles into an even fiercer defensive intensity, as if each steal and block was a personal statement against his critics and inner battles. Then came the transformation from player to coach, a journey that seemed to bring Johnson full circle. With the Austin Toros, he found a new purpose, molding young talent in the D-League. It was more than just X's and O's. It was about passing on the hard-earned wisdom of a life lived on basketball's razor edge. His coaching style reflected his own journey, demanding excellence while understanding human frailty, pushing limits while recognizing boundaries. The irony wasn't lost on those who knew him. The former troublemaker now preaching discipline, the rebel becoming the mentor. Johnson's coaching philosophy was built on the very values he'd sometimes struggled with as a player: hard work, discipline, resilience. He wasn't just teaching basketball, he was sharing life lessons drawn from his own battles, both won and lost. Up until that final practice in Austin, Johnson was doing what he loved most: giving back to the game that had given him everything. His sudden passing left a generation of young players without their mentor, but his legacy lived on through the lessons he'd shared. In the end, perhaps his greatest achievement wasn't just surviving his personal demons, but using those experiences to help others navigate their own paths through professional basketball's challenging landscape. In the developmental league, Johnson found himself walking a unique line: part legend, part teacher. His players saw both sides of him: the five-time All-Star who'd battled with the NBA's best, and the hands-on coach who understood the grind of climbing basketball's ladder. Some players were awestruck by his presence, while others connected with his raw honesty about the game's challenges. He wasn't just teaching basketball, he was sharing battle scars and wisdom earned the hard way. Then came that fateful February day in 2007. The Austin Convention Center, usually alive with the sounds of bouncing balls and squeaking sneakers, fell silent. Johnson, just 52 years old, had been in the middle of a conversation with a journalist. Typical DJ, talking basketball, sharing stories. No one could have known these would be his final moments. The sudden cardiac arrest struck without warning, and despite frantic efforts by medical personnel, one of basketball's most resilient fighters couldn't win this final battle. The speculation about what caused his heart to fail that day runs deep. Some point to the physical toll of his playing career, those explosive leaps, the bruising defensive battles, the countless minutes of high-intensity basketball. Others wonder if years of personal stress and the emotional weight of his struggles might have contributed. The truth, like many aspects of Johnson's life, remains somewhat mysterious. The cruel irony wasn't lost on anyone, that the man who made his name with clutch performances in life's biggest moments would be taken so suddenly, so unexpectedly. His passing created a void in basketball that went beyond just losing a former great player or promising coach. It was the loss of someone who understood both the heights of success and the depths of struggle, someone who could have guided future generations through basketball's complicated landscape with hard-earned wisdom and raw authenticity. The question of prevention haunts those who were there that February day in Austin. Could something have been done differently? Could modern medical screening have caught warning signs? These questions linger like ghosts in the minds of those who witnessed his final moments. At 52, Johnson was supposed to have decades ahead of him, time to shape young minds and leave his full mark on the coaching world. The impact of his death rippled through the NBA community with devastating force. Larry Bird, a man known for his stoic demeanor, showed rare emotion when speaking about his former teammate. DJ was one of the best clutch players I ever played with, Bird said, his voice carrying the weight of loss. He wasn't just a teammate, he was the guy you wanted next to you in the trenches. Danny Ainge echoed these sentiments, remembering Johnson not just as a player, but as someone who understood the game at a profound level. But it was in the private moments, away from the cameras and microphones, where the true depth of loss was felt. Former Celtics players would gather and share stories about DJ, his legendary defensive stops, his clutch shots. But more importantly, his laughter in the locker room, his way of lifting team spirits during tough stretches. These weren't just memories of a basketball player, they were remembrances of a man who had touched lives beyond the hardwood. The relationships Johnson built throughout his career revealed a deeper truth about his impact. Despite his personal struggles, despite the controversies that sometimes shadowed his name, those who knew him best spoke of his genuine love for the game and his desire to give back. His former players with the Toros talked about a coach who didn't just teach basketball. He taught life lessons, drawing from both his triumphs and his mistakes. His death created a void in basketball that went beyond statistics and achievements. It was the loss of a living bridge between basketball's past and future, someone who had seen both the highs and lows of the sport and could speak to them with authentic wisdom. In the end, Johnson's passing reminded the basketball world that sometimes the most profound legacies are built not just on championships and accolades, but on the lives touched and the lessons shared along the way. A basketball career that began on the unforgiving streets of Compton and ended in an Austin convention center tells us something profound about the human spirit. Dennis Johnson's story isn't just about basketball, it's a mirror reflecting the complicated nature of greatness itself. In him, we see both the soaring heights of athletic achievement and the crushing weight of personal demons, all wrapped in one remarkable journey. Think about that kid standing 5 feet 9 inches, barely getting playing time in high school, driving a forklift for $2.75 an hour. Fast forward to the same man making game-winning plays in the NBA Finals, shutting down the league's best players, earning the respect of legends like Larry Bird. The distance between these 2 points isn't just measured in years or achievements, it's measured in perseverance, in the daily battle to overcome both external doubts and internal struggles. Johnson's legacy is complicated by design, because life itself is complicated. His domestic violence incident, the drug allegations, the clashes with authority, these aren't footnotes to be hidden away, but rather essential parts of a larger truth. Greatness doesn't emerge from perfection, but from the ability to keep pushing forward despite our flaws and failures. What makes his story so compelling, so human, is precisely this mix of triumph and tragedy. The same hands that delivered clutch playoff performances were once cuffed in a domestic dispute. The same mind that read defenses so brilliantly sometimes struggled to read life's signals off the court. Yet through it all, Johnson kept evolving, kept growing, eventually becoming a mentor to young players, teaching them not just about basketball, but about the complicated path of professional athletics. Perhaps that's the most powerful lesson from Johnson's life. Greatness isn't about avoiding falls, it's about how you rise after them. His story teaches us that our heroes don't need to be perfect to be worthy of admiration. They just need to be real, to keep fighting, to show us that even in our darkest moments, there's always a path forward if we're willing to take it. Like and subscribe for 100 years of luck.